Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated was the first to report on this week. But for 3 to 4 years, there's been a group studying how to make college football games shorter. We every single week we get 4.5 hour long games that just keep running long into new TV windows. I don't know why ESPN and Fox haven't adjusted their TV windows at this point.
That's a huge question.
That 2:30 game is not going to start on time on your
No,
network. Why are we
and it
still
ain't gonna end by 6. We know that.
why are we still pretending? They have games on ESPN this year scheduled to start at 5 and 8 on the big ESPN network. Like, no,
That ain't
everyone
gonna
knows that
happen.
that
Come
is
on.
not going to happen. That 8 o'clock game is going to be on ESPN News or Watch ESPN, and everyone over the age of 70 is not going to know how to find that. I digress, but the bottom line is there's been a group that's looking into how can we shorten college football games for about 3 to 4 years now, and it looks like, according to Ross Dellinger at least, they have 4 proposals that are under consideration for this next phase. So those 4 proposals are, quoting from his Twitter, number 1, prohibiting consecutive timeouts. Most of the time we see this during a situation where they're trying to ice kickers. No untimed down at the end of the first or third quarter if there's a penalty. The clock would run on first downs except inside 2 minutes of a half. And the fourth one, this is the most fascinating one to me. The clock runs on incompletions once the ball is spotted. So, Garrett, I think we like some of these. I think we definitely don't like at least one of these. And speaking for myself, I hate that fourth one. I think that
Yeah.
completely changes the game of football. I'm imagining Air Force trying to ice a game and getting 4 yards of carry and then just chucking it down the field on third down and then getting to run 40 more seconds off the clock before they punt. But of those other ones, I think we can all agree that college football definitely has a timing problem. I mentioned the TV windows. I mentioned, you and I have been to games in the middle of August or September where it's, 95 degrees in the state of Texas,
Mm-hmm.
70% humidity, and we're standing out there for 4.5 hours when you factor in once you've gotten to your seat and once you're leaving. That's a really long time. It's definitely, if we talk about player safety, it's a long time for the players to be on a hot or a cold field. More plays are being run. That's definitely, if we're talking about player safety, again, more plays being run is more opportunities for an injury. I do think that college football has a timing problem. Do I think that all 4 of these are necessarily the best ways to solve that problem? I don't think so. But Garrett, I'm curious to think, what was your initial reaction to these? At least we'll start with the 4 proposals that Ross Dellinger is reporting on.
Right. So, obviously, I think you're correct. There is an issue with the timing. These games take too long. Nobody wants to stand around for that long. Nobody wants to sit in a stadium for that long. And this
My
does
butt
take
gets
away
sore on the
from.
couch during some of these SEC and
Yeah.
CBS games, man.
I mean, look, one of the longest experiences of my life was at it was the Texas A&M Tennessee game in 2016, where it had the CBS primetime window. It was a big game. Trevor Knight and Josh Dobbs and 8 versus 9, and both were undefeated. All that stuff, right? It was an exciting game. It was a lot of fun. But man, it just seemed like every time they had a chance to cut to commercial, that guy with the orange sleeve ran out on the field. And let me tell you what, we'll talk about this. Nothing bothers me like that guy with the orange sleeve. And so if there's anything we can do to make the game shorter and not have to stand out there, yeah, that's great. I'm a fan. Let's get this thing rolling. Let's do as much as we can. In terms of the proposals, I guess if we want to go one by one, we can. Talking about the consecutive timeouts for icing the kicks, I'm fine with that. I really have no issue with that. I don't think it makes a whole lot of a difference
It
anyways.
doesn't.
You get your one timeout, that makes them think about it enough.
It was novel when coaches first discovered that they could do that. I feel like maybe like
Right.
mid 2000s is when that trend really started. I could be dating myself here. That might have been a thing for much longer than that, but um, it felt like it sometimes makes a difference. I feel like it more bites the coaches that call the timeouts in the butt more than it does the actual opposing kicker, though. So I'm fine with
Right.
that one as
Well,
well.
because sometimes you'll see the kicker miss the kick, and then you find out the other coach called the timeout, and then they lets him line it up one more time. I totally get it if you miss it one way, then you miss it the other way, and you can kind of get in a guy's head. But especially for those longer kicks in college, a 40, 50-yard kick, those are hard kicks to make anyways. And I think we saw in the national championship game, poor kid from Ohio State, or not the national championship game, but the semifinal game.
Semifinal, yeah.
Yeah, the poor kid from Ohio State, man, I felt so bad for him. He was clearly just nervous. I'm sure he's made that field goal so many times in his life, and it was
Absolutely.
just the nerves of the moment. It's super late. It was like right at midnight, right? And so it's just a rough situation for a lot of those college kickers. Anyways, I don't think you're really winning a lot with that. Consecutive timeouts, I think canning those, even if you wanted to just do it within a couple minutes, it stops the games in the middle from getting long and boring and dragged out, right? Even if you wanted to just let it happen at the end of a game, okay, fine, right? That's not dragging out the result. It's just dragging out that one situation at the end of the game. So if they wanted to make it an under 2 minutes, under 1 minute situation, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really have any issues with that. The second one, the no one time down at the end of the first quarter, third quarter,
This
fine.
is
I
the
don't
most
care.
no-brainer one to me. It
Yeah.
has never made any sense at all that we have a defensive pass interference. It's a super rare occurrence, right? Like, I think
Right.
people might be listening to this and maybe realizing for the first time that we do this in college football. It's super rare. It's not going to affect very many games. I'd say probably less than 5% if I just had to throw a number at it. But it makes absolutely no sense to have an untimed down. Short of like a
Right.
really windy situation, like I could see like a coach being really frustrated that now they have to go into a 30-mile-per-hour wind versus,
Sure.
but you're gonna have to do that anyway. One play later, like,
Right.
sorry, your one play last shot at the end of the quarter didn't work out, but like, let's come on, let's
Well,
go.
and like on the average college football season, how much time is this saving? You know what I mean? That's my
Right?
real
Yeah.
question here with this suggestion. Like, okay, I can get behind this, but that feels like a really small thing that doesn't matter. It
Like they
feels
wanted
like
to make their list look a little bit longer, and
right.
they
It
just
seems like they came up with like one or two good. We've all done this writing essays, right? You have to do like three objectives, and you can only think of like one and a half,
your
and so
third
you're
your third paragraph is usually the
it's
weakest one.
teeny
Absolutely.
tiny, yeah, right. And so we've all done this writing essays in college and stuff like that. We know what it's like. The third one is clock running on first downs, except inside 2 minutes of a half. Okay, I kind of like that. I would prefer that you get more time because it does. I think that can do the time of possession thing, and I think that has a bigger impact on the game. Is if you're not allowing the clock to run, or sorry, if you're allowing the clock to run, once the ball spotted after first down, like I think that's just kind of letting the time of possession thing happen, and it does favor teams that are more run style teams, maybe not as talented, but just want to play a little bit of ball control there. It favors those teams. I'd prefer the slowdown and make those teams earn it. And if you're going to hold the ball, force them to hold the ball and keep converting on plays. Because to me, that makes sense. I'm not aggressively upset at that, right? I wouldn't be the first to be like, no, this is bad. We need to, stop the clock. Like, I'm not going to hate that rule if it does get passed, but I think it would affect the games. That fourth one, though, I think
Wasn't
that's the
scary.
real
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
That's the issue for me.
That would be completely changing how the game is played. And the third one, the clock running on first downs, that would change some. Players are going to have to adjust to that when they go to the NFL, anyways. I think if we want to really speed up the game, I think this would cut down on. We're going to talk about commercials here in just a second, but that's the biggest thing that we really need to do to
Mm-hmm.
cut down on this game. But clock running on first downs, I think makes sense. I don't think these are college age athletes. I don't think we need to stop the clock, give everybody a round of applause, and bring orange slices out every time we get 10 yards,
Sure.
right? Like it makes sense in lower levels of football. Middle school and high school, you got to regroup every 4 plays or so. And
Right.
so
Yes.
giving that time to kind of coach up, to get a play in, to kind of like breathe for a second, I really like. I know some purists, like if there's a big comeback that's trying to happen, stopping the clock on first down definitely helps the team that's behind, and it would result maybe in fewer total comeback victories. So maybe you extend that to 5 minutes of a half. I don't know. 2 minutes is
Right.
definitely uniform with the NFL, with the 2 minute warning, but yeah, you extend that to 5 minutes, whatever. I don't think that we need to stop the clock. I've felt that way for a long time. I don't think that we need to stop the clock every time we get a first down for the entirety of the game. Now, clock running on incompletion, that is a stupid idea. Please never do this. Whoever is listening to this show that might
Please.
have some influence on the rules committee, I think that's going to get voted down. Like I don't see any coaches or commissioners or athletic directors agreeing to that rule. So I'm not. If you had to rank it, that's definitely the least likely to get passed because it's the dumbest, quite frankly.
No, it is. It forces. I mean, you could call an air raid offense a ball control offense, and that shouldn't happen. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be allowed to run, real quick to the line, and we're gonna toss a ball, and if it's incomplete, we're gonna let the clock still run because then you get air raid offenses that are already kind of difficult to cover that can string out like 12-minute possessions just by
yeah,
virtue of the fact that they threw the ball 30 times in a drive or something like that. And it's a little absurd to me. I think that's I don't see really a way forward where that makes a lot of sense because I mean for obvious reasons, and especially if we're talking about inside of a couple minutes, and it just doesn't allow for teams to come back or to really use any strategy in terms of what types of plays they're running. It doesn't really incentivize passing the football as opposed to running the football because there's an inherent incentive in throwing the football if you're trying to come back from behind. Otherwise, just hand it off to your running backs, which if we want more collision and hitting people and all stuff like that instead of guys catching the ball in space and then running out of bounds. If we want more of that, then we could do that. But I thought we
yeah,
were moving towards a safer situation for the players. I thought we were trying to find ways to minimize contact. Not to say that we never want to run the football, because
right.
running the football is a big part of football. I'm not trying to get away from that. I don't want 7-on-7, but if we're gonna have this complex game with different ways that you can run plays, different styles of offense, different strategies in the way you build your team, then we have to allow for there to be reasons why people do that. Otherwise, you're going to get a uniform sport where nothing actually is different, and it's just okay. Well, who can pass it better, run it better? Because there's no difference in the strategy. There's no way to distinguish yourself from another team or to catch them with some kind of strategy. It kills a lot of what strategy goes into the game, and there's far better ways to save time in football. There's far better ways to save time.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of those here in just a second. Obviously, this is not just a college football problem. We see the MLB. Obviously, if you haven't watched any spring training or kept up with that, there's a pitch clock this year. Got to be on the mound, ready to pitch with 10 seconds to go, or it's a ball. You have to be in the box, ready to bat, or it's a strike. And we've seen, I know this past weekend, we saw a spring training game, bases loaded, 2 outs in the ninth. Game ends on a called strike because the batter wasn't in the box. And so
Yep.
MLB is working for fan engagement on that to shorten the games. I got to go to a college baseball game last weekend, and it is noticeable how much quicker the game is moving because of an adjustment in the pitch clock. They're doing something similar to the MLB.
Right.
But, I think you definitely can go too far, and that incompletion rule would certainly go too far in my mind.
Yeah.
But, I think it's really kind of a commentary on, where we're at as a society. I don't think that, back when attention spans were longer, not, dictated by social media, the games were shorter. So it's kind of a chicken or egg situation. But we definitely
Right.
have shorter attention spans as a society. We want to get younger viewers. We want to get people to tune in for the entirety of a game. And that's going to kind of lead into this next thing where the biggest issue, obviously, in the length of games is the amount of commercials. And you touched
Yep.
on this, Garrett, where there's nothing worse than standing at a game or sitting at a game, big moment, tons of energy in the crowd, and then the guy in the orange gloves just runs out on the field
Yep.
and holds up his sign that says, well, we're going to be sitting here for 3.5 minutes. And you just have to slowly watch the
Yep.
time tick down off of his
Yep.
little clock. There's nothing worse than that. And obviously, we talked about these TV contracts. Obviously, that money has to come from somewhere, and that money comes largely from ad revenue. Broad companies want to advertise on these games because they're one of the only things people watch live anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the number of commercials is obviously the biggest issue, and I don't know. I do think there are ways to fix that, but it would definitely be very radical. And I don't know that the companies involved that are wanting to buy these ad slots would definitely, I don't know that they would be on board with those radical changes.
Well, let's be objective here for just a second, because obviously, it kills the environment, it kills the moment, all of that stuff, right? If you want more eyeballs to see your commercials, you're going to want more people watching the product first,
That's the
right?
logic that I would follow
You,
as
you,
well. But apparently, like, because me, when I'm watching college football on a Saturday, unless it's my team playing, I'm not watching any commercials. There are
Right.
enough games on that I am going, like, if I'm watching a Big Ten game on ABC, it goes to commercial, I'm immediately flipping to ESPN or
Yes.
Fox or ESPN2.
No, right. And so, for me, I'm looking at this saying, I want as many people watching my channel for my commercials as possible. I think the best format is the way that YouTube and Twitch does this, right? Where you have brief breaks from the action. And, it's a quick thing. It can, happen at a predetermined time slot, and you can still have production crews running the whole thing, where they say, oh, we're doing a timeout. Let's hit 2 or 3 commercials, just a couple quick ones, 15, 30-second ads, and we're right back into it. You can even have it split on the screen if you want to. You can have, we're going to split this if there's like a particularly long, situation where, you're having to wait for a player to hobble off the field, or, something like that, then you can do that, right? You can have those little moments. You can also do this between first quarter and second quarter, between third quarter and fourth quarter. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, these companies probably already have these ads in this format because they're already advertising on YouTube and on Twitch and on all these other social media sites. So they already have short form ads. And the only time that we actually like advertisements, anyways, is at the Super Bowl, and it's because they're not playing the same thing over and over again. It's a new ad every time, right? And I'm not saying that
Exactly.
we have to make a brand new ad for every single second, but you could limit 1 or 2 run throughs per time, or you could sell the space for such a price that it wouldn't make sense for a company to buy that many spots of advertising because it's more scarce, right? I don't need to see the Whopper 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 commercial 46 times before halftime. I don't need that in my life. Nobody needs that much Whopper in their life. And so
No.
I'm kind of sitting here, I'm wondering, like, why don't we just switch to a shorter form anyways, not cut to so many commercials, right? Just you can have one quick ad between the kickoff and the team getting on the field, right? One quick ad, split the screen, you watch the offense run onto the field. You can even wait till the ad goes for the ref to blow the whistle and we can get started, right? If we just really need the extra 5 or 10 seconds for the ad. But just cut the ads. Nobody's watching them anyways. Nobody's watching these TV commercials. Nobody's watched TV commercials in 20 years, right? And so it's if they're wanting to modernize for a modern audience, then take some advice from these other modern platforms that people are watching on, and have shorter commercials, or limit your commercial space overall. Figure out a different way to do ad revenue.
Yeah, and I could rant for a while about how TV markets, and it seems like everything's geared to the 60 plus crowd. Like, we have to make it
Mm-hmm.
so easy. It has to be on network TV. Streaming is not an option, right? Everything's so catered to that crowd. No offense if you're listening and you're 60 plus, but if you're listening to this podcast, you know how to work a podcast, so you're probably not who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're
But
probably also upset at your peers for not knowing how to use technology.
exactly. You're the one at the breakfast club that's, teaching them how to use their phone. And so shout out to you. We need you in this society. But man, like, we got to figure something out. I watch a lot of soccer, Garrett. I know you do too. And soccer's had to do this forever. There are no commercial breaks in a soccer game because there's no stoppage of play.
Yeah.
So it's the biggest sport in the world. These companies in Europe and in Asia and other places where soccer is the most watched sport, they figured it out. They have a little banner ad during the game, and it's, distracting a little bit if you're trying to watch the game. There's big banners around the sides. There's advertisements on the jerseys. There's ads everywhere at a soccer game. And they might be a little bit distracting, but they're not cutting away from the game for 3 minutes or making me change the channel. So we can figure this out. Like, we definitely can, but there's no motivation to figure it out right now,
Yeah.
partially because we're all still watching.
Gracious him.